This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. The maze is that journey through life. And we now have two series of Avoid the Maze. We have Avoid the Maze, your journey through life, and soon to be your Avoid the Maze, you are special. And they sort of tie in together. So, Jeremy, let me explain that before we introduce you. And that is, so many of us think we are on this journey of life all by ourselves. We're the only ones who feel pain, sadness, or maybe we're not as happy as everybody else. But the reality of it is, we have choices that we can make. And when I read your bio, I know that you make choices that help you live a better life. It's not waiting for somebody else to produce happiness. So,
Yes.
Jeremy Haselwood, welcome to Avoid the Maze, your journey. And tell us a little bit about who you are and why I think that you are going to be so entertaining today.
Cool. Well, thank you, Karen. And first, I love your shirt because it says, but first coffee. And,
Yep,
and that's what's happening right over here. I got my first cup of the day going.
good.
Um, so yeah, no, I'm happy to be here. My life, I don't know, where should I start? I live in Atlanta now. So kind of how I got here is I've been here for over 20 years. I'm from Oklahoma, born and raised. And I was back and forth between Oklahoma City and Guthrie, Oklahoma, which is a town outside of Oklahoma City. And grew up really mainly in Guthrie, which is the town, and kind of the small town feel to it. There were some events that happened in my life that kind of, I guess we have these things we look back on that were game changers for you that you don't realize at the time. Sometimes could have been a big change in life, could have been trauma, and sometimes the change is the trauma. For me, it was actually moving I guess my sophomore year in high school, going from a town where I knew everybody to a new school where I didn't know anybody and kind of experiencing loneliness that comes with that. Like you're in high school and kind of a rough time to start over and build new relationships with a group of people who've known each other for a long time and already have their friend groups. Um, and then I started doing music. I was literally like that kid at a new school, like sitting at a cafeteria table by myself, like just writing poetry, writing music. I had like instrumentals in my ear and I would just write rhymes. So that turned into a friend of mine in my neighborhood. We said, hey, let's make a song. So we made a rap song and it was terrible. It was garbage. It was the worst song that I've ever made in my life. But we thought it was kind of cool. So we did it again the next year and we let some people hear it and everybody was just going crazy for it. And I say everybody, meaning like our friends and family, like people
Sure.
close to us. Um, so we're like, hey, there might be something here. So, I'm busting tables on weekends and, going after I had this seed planted, like, hey, people like this. I like creating and it feels good that people appreciate this art. So I'm busting tables and saving money to buy studio time. And we put out an album when I was at high school. And so I was selling this album, kind of the old school methods out of my locker, out of my trunk of my car, wherever I could sell it. I would go to consignment shops in Oklahoma City and get my cassettes. At the time, it was a cassette act, which are coming back, by the way, which is
Right.
kind of weird. So getting my cassette into some of the record stores, and that was pretty cool. And so graduated high school, went to college, fast forward a little bit, and got to a point where I was like, I really want to pursue music. And I've got to get out of Oklahoma because Oklahoma is not really a hotbed for the music industry unless it's country. And I wasn't country. I mean, Garth Brooks is from there, one of the biggest country stars of all time. But that wasn't my jam. That's not what I
Right.
was doing. So at the time, it was like, let's move to either, and I say let's because my friend that I was doing music with, like, I wanted to keep the group together and see what we could do. And it was either like New York, LA, or Atlanta. And at the time, I still do have an aunt here in Atlanta and I liked a lot of the music that was coming out of Atlanta at the time. So we came down for a summer and we're like, let's give it a summer. Let's try it out, see what happens. And the first show that we did was an Apollo style show where, if the crowd doesn't like you, they'll boo you off the stage. And we ended up actually winning the whole show. And so we were like,
Ah,
okay, this is a game changer. Another thing that happened, it's like, this is confirmation that this is where we need to be. So it was, really that decision that changed my life. I'm still here, a couple of decades later and experienced some, I don't know, I was an independent artist. I never got a major record deal, but we put out a couple of independent projects. And, looking back, everything that I am now professionally and, how I conduct myself day to day with my business and my writing and everything, like, is all rooted in that journey of what I learned, just going after a dream and organizing my life such that I have a goal and I'm writing and I'm just putting everything into it, and I have zero regrets. Certainly everything was not easy. There were times where experienced, job loss and unemployment and things like that. But, fast forward, it's like I'm at a place where I look back and I have so much gratitude for my journey.
well, one of the things that I'm hearing from you is that you could have gotten stuck and said, "Oh, I'm the new guy in town. Nobody's going to be my friend. I'm going to eat lunch alone for the next 3 years." You could
Hmm.
have done that.
Yeah.
Many people do because they think,
Hmm.
what can I do? Okay, I'm
Hmm.
the only one feeling this way. But obviously, in that huge lunchroom, there were other people who were
Hmm.
probably feeling lonely as well.
Yeah.
You took it upon yourself that, hey, I'm going to do what is important to me or what I like to do. I'm not
Hmm.
going to just sit in the corner and, cry about it. And
Yeah.
I have something very similar to what you went through, but mine was in the middle of my senior year. And my
Wow. That's
parents
tough.
moved me
Uh,
800 miles away. Okay.
yeah.
Um, but I too decided that, hey, I have a choice. I can be absolutely miserable and I can hate
Hmm.
my parents for this, which
Hmm.
they had a good reason for moving us.
Sure.
Um, or I can just try to be the best that I can be at the time.
Hmm.
And that's the difference about as we go through this maze of life. Yes, we get stuck a little bit, like you did in the
Hmm.
beginning. I'm going to sit at
Hmm.
this table by myself. But
Hmm.
then you start looking around. How can I keep moving? And
Yeah.
you talked about being on unemployment and other things in your career.
Hmm.
We all do that. And we could
Yeah.
stay there,
Hmm.
but where does that get us?
Yeah.
So,
No, that's
and you also brought up that you've never had a major label, but don't you think sometimes that the major label sort of tells you who you're going to be rather than you tell?
100%. What's interesting about that is one of my, almost a mentor to me back in Oklahoma City that I was working with early with the music. And when it kind of came to a point where the music was fizzling out, I was having a conversation with him, really expressing frustration. It's like, man, it's really hard and feel like we're being overlooked. Um, but he said something that like I'll never forget. And I'll give you the clean version of what he said, which was, you got to do everything exactly the way that you wanted to do it. He's like, if you were on a major label, you wouldn't have had that freedom to create. You would have had someone dictating what you can do, what you can say, what you can say, who's going to be a part of your project, who's not going to. He's like, so there's freedom in what you did. He's like, so looking at that, it's like, you can't be disappointed with how things worked out because it's your work. You own it because we own all of our music. You own it and you got to do everything that you wanted to do with it. And it was really that reframing that allowed me to appreciate that because it was 100% correct. Like, unless you're like a huge big star like, a Michael Jackson or somebody where you can actually say, I'm not going to do this or that. Like, most artists do have to do that push and pull with record labels. And the new artist especially doesn't have a lot of say. So looking back, it's like I'm very grateful because I'm proud of like most of the catalog of music that I record. There's some songs I'm like, that's not a good song. But overall, I'm like, even the songs that weren't good, like that was my choice. It wasn't someone saying you need to make a song like this. So I have a lot of gratitude for that and just, it's like that freedom of being able to create something that's mine and share it with the world. Is just, I mean, I do it now, like even writing books. It's like these are my words. I'm not a published, I mean, I'm a published author, but I don't have a publishing company. I'm not
Right.
signed to a publisher. So self-published. It's like every word is mine, every like the creative vision is mine and everything. And I appreciate that.
And I think that's really important for us to understand. For the last 8 years, I've been working with a lot of musicians. My
Hmm.
brother happens to be a music producer. And so through him, I got connected. And that's what I started understanding is that, especially those who have written their own music, at the
Hmm.
time, they may have thought, this is great. And for that time, it was. It got
Yeah.
heard, it got appreciated. But then as
Hmm.
time went on, they looked at it and said, wow, who wrote that? And yet
Yeah.
they can still pat themselves on the back to say, okay, look where I am today. Okay,
Hmm.
maybe I did learn something from that. Or maybe now I'm going to take that and rework it and
Hmm.
make it into something else. Those are the things that I'm hoping that my listeners hear, that nothing is ever going to be 100% perfect.
Hmm.
And we might look at you, you know, 30 years, into your career and say, well, look at Jeremy. He's he's made it. He's making it. Well, you know what? One of the things I've learned is you're only as good as the last thing you did. So
Hmm.
that means you got to
Yeah.
be better the next time. And that means we constantly have to be working on
Yeah.
ourselves.
Right. Yeah,
So,
it's just I was gonna say just the
no,
evolution. Like once you've accomplished something, for one, like celebrate that accomplishment because I think a lot of people, myself included, once you accomplish something, you're on to the next thing. But to me, it's like I do want to keep evolving and keep moving. So even though I've just done something, I'm like, I'm not just gonna sit back and coast the rest of my life and become stagnant. It's like that's not what I'm put here for. That's not what you're put here for. It's like we've accomplished this almost like a stair step so that we can accomplish the next thing.
exactly. So you mentioned that you have a daughter. Okay.
Mm,
Is your family following in your footsteps, or
mm.
has your way of living influenced them?
Um, I would say there's probably, I mean, I'd like to say I have some influence on them. I think parents have more influence than we realize with our kids. So I have three kids. I have two daughters, one son, and it's interesting. And they're all adults now. They're all in their 20s, and it's interesting to see their path. And actually, my son recently started doing music, and I was really surprised by it. And I was to myself, actually, I told him kind of jokingly, I was like, oh, you're continuing on the family business. It's good to pass the baton. So he's doing some music now. But he's also, similar to me, like he's left, like he's moved to New York. He's talking about moving to LA soon. So he's kind of got that. I'd like to say I have some influence on that. One of my other daughters, is in the hospitality industry, and she finished up school here in Georgia and moved to Florida, to really pursue her career. And the other daughter I mentioned that went to school in Ohio, she's really latched on to her career. And so it is interesting to see how all of them, I think once you see maybe your parents or a model and your mind is open to actually what's possible, then you believe that that's possible and that you can achieve it too. It doesn't have to be this cookie cutter way of life. My life certainly has been anything but that. And I've shared stories about my life with my kids, because they didn't always see the struggle and they weren't even alive yet when I was doing music. And, when they were itty bitty, so they don't understand. So telling the more humanistic stories because a lot of times we look at our parents like they're these invincible creatures and human beings, and then as you become the age that your parents were, when you were younger, you look at them as like these old people. And now you're that old person,
Yeah.
but you don't feel or look old. And so you actually have a lot more empathy for your parents. And you recognize that I've gone through a lot in my life, ups and downs. So what did they go through, And so sharing those stories with my kids to help them give perspective on life, I think are tools that I want to continue to feed into them. so that they can make decisions, but also identify what's possible in their lives and stretch beyond that.
Well, and I think what I'm also hearing is that you didn't set a path for your children, which
Mm-mm.
is probably the best parenting tool that we all can have. Um,
Hmm.
I know I have two sons, and my oldest son always would say to us, you know, he had this path he wanted to go on. He told us from a very young age he was going to be in politics.
Hmm.
Luckily, once he became an attorney, he decided he did not want to be in politics.
Yeah.
Um, uh, he dabbles in government,
Hmm.
because that's an interest to him. But
Yeah.
he is doing what he wants to do, and his real love is entertainment law,
Yeah.
and that's not where he's really working, but
Hmm.
he has that side hustle. And
Yeah.
we never said to him, please don't go into politics or don't do
Hmm.
this or don't do that. Um, it was like, you've got to follow your path. I
Yeah.
followed mine. My husband
Hmm.
followed his.
Hmm.
And the same with my youngest son. Two
Hmm.
years ago, he announced that he was moving to Texas to take a job. It was in his career field, and he just packed up his car and he went. And
Yeah.
as a parent, my first reaction was, oh my. And then it was,
Yeah.
wait a second. He's going to learn how to live on his own, but he's going to
Yeah.
be doing it in something that he wants to do.
Hmm.
I know when I was being brought up, my parents had a path that they thought my brothers and I were going to take.
Yeah.
Um, None of us followed the path.
Yeah.
And before my mother passed away, and I had been podcasting, so she's going to be gone 8 years. I've been doing
Wow.
this for 11 years.
Wow.
And I remember her saying to me one day, are you a famous broadcaster? My answer was, I'm the most famous broadcaster in this house.
There you
And,
go.
that changed my thinking going forward.
Hmm.
When someone says, how successful are you? I'm the most successful one doing this podcast.
Yeah.
And people look at me and go, oh, because success is not necessarily in dollars, it's
Hmm.
not necessarily how many friends you have or viewers you have. It's about how you feel about what you're
Yes.
contributing.
Mhm. Yeah, no. Success is very internal. Nobody can tell you whether you're successful or not. Like you can tell yourself that because you define what your success is. So I do like that perspective. And, from the outside, we also see people as successful. We view them a certain way. But if you ask them, they would say, no, I haven't even reached where I'm trying to go yet. But to them, from the outside looking in, you're like, they've got a lot of times we base it on material things. They're making this amount of money. They've got this house, this car, whatever. They great marriage. They're living their life. They're successful. But to them, it may be like, I mean, they don't necessarily see that, or they may, but the way that we're gauging their success may not be the way that they are. Because
Exactly.
for me, success is just like having my bills paid, having my family, like everybody's healthy, going after a goal, accomplishing goals, like to me, that's success. I don't need to make crazy amounts of money. If I do, then great, but that doesn't define my success.
That's another reason why I do this particular podcast, because in the beginning, when I started doing it, I had listeners say to me, oh, well, you had this person on and they said that they're making six figures. And I said, but did you hear what it took to get there? What they
Hmm.
did? And not everybody's going to make six figures. And that's not the
Yeah.
importance of it. Are you living your best life? And the best
Yeah.
life, again, doesn't mean, you're going on all these fabulous trips. I have a
Hmm.
friend who she and her husband have worked very, very hard. Their two young daughters who are in their 20s work very, very hard. But they work so hard that they do have that extra that when they go on a trip, it is luxurious. And,
Hmm.
you know, the first time I saw it posted, I thought, boy, do you have to put that out there? But then I thought about all the hard work I see them doing. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you really need that break. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not one of those luxurious people. In fact, my
Hmm.
husband yesterday said to me, we really need to go on a nice vacation.
Hmm.
And my answer to him was, I'm going to be worrying about work.
Hmm.
You're going to be worrying about work. We're going to be
Hmm.
worrying about family. How about if we go away for an overnight or a weekend? Because
Yeah.
that to me, I can escape. This is who I am. And I
Hmm.
told him, you know, I could be sitting on a beach in Hawaii, but you know what? My laptop's going to be on my lap and I'm going to
Yeah.
be working. So that's not important to me.
Yeah.
But if it's important to somebody else, then work for it and
Hmm.
you can achieve it. So I
Yeah.
want to go back to your music. You said you created
Sure.
music early on,
Hmm.
but you're writing now.
Hmm.
So are
Yeah.
you still creating music or are you just writing books? Where are you
Yeah.
today?
Yeah, so my career now is I own a digital marketing consultancy here in Atlanta. So that's like the main thing that I do. I say 9 to 5, but I work for myself. So it's I don't know, it's my company. But in addition to that, I also have put out 2 books. One book was about digital fundraising because a lot of my clients are nonprofits, and I learned that there was really a deficit with nonprofits when it came to understanding how digital marketing works and fundraising. So I wrote a book about that, gosh, maybe 5 years ago, and put that out on Amazon. And last year, I put out my book called Finding Your Edge: How to Unlock Your Talent and Purpose. And that is about personal growth. And that's really like my book that's my passion project. I mean, to me, I love what I do with digital marketing and working with clients, but where I'm trying to go is keeping my practice, but also expanding and doing more like speaking and workshops and things like that, really geared toward inspiring people to find their purpose as well. So that's my book contains some different frameworks in there, and gives little anecdotes about my journey, the highs and lows and tools that I've used and put together to, help somebody else out. So, and I find like freedom still in the writing. Like I do enjoy writing, and ultimately, I just want to inspire and provide hope to people.
That inspiration is very important. About 10 years ago, I was working for a for-profit college
Hmm.
and basically was coaching students.
Hmm.
Loved what I did, but the culture
Yeah,
was
yeah,
killing me to the point that I was, being brought into my supervisor's office every couple of weeks and saying, you know, Karen, what are you doing? You're not making your numbers. Well, you're right. I'm not making the numbers you want me to make, but
yeah.
the students that I bring in,
Hmm.
we retain them because I
Yeah,
have an open door policy. They can come in, they can talk to me, I can help them, and guide them where their instructors just weren't doing that. It was
hmm
the type of college. Um, they finally, right before my 10th year anniversary, said, this probably isn't working out. And of course, I was devastated
yeah,
because I thought my purpose was being filled
mm,
with these students. And
yeah,
I walked out of there totally confused. And my
hmm
husband and son sat me down and said, what is it you really want to do? And I said, I just want to get my voice out there. And was
hmm
okay, well, how can you do it?
yeah,
And of course, I could go stand on the street corner, but
yeah. With the
probably get arrested.
megaphone.
Um, and so when I figured out podcasting, and then I figured out journaling, and then I went on to blogging, and then I had companies coming to me and saying, would you write a blog for us every week? Okay.
Hmm.
Because we have people who are sitting in their offices who are capable, but they're not doing what they need to do.
Right.
And, I would go back, well, is it the culture in the office? And of course,
Hmm.
business would say, no, it's not us. Of course, it's not.
Yeah.
Um, but then I would find out when they would read the blogs, they would come to me and they would say, I've been an accountant for 10 years and I hate numbers. And it'd be like, then maybe it's time
Yeah.
to change your
Might
path.
be
Okay. And
exactly.
you can
Yep.
keep doing that to put money on the table. but
Yes.
what is it you like to do? And
Mm,
someone said, they like to perform and they had the talent. And my comment was that on the weekends, go find a bar, a restaurant, and
hmm.
say, "Hey, I'll play for chips."
Yep.
It was unbelievable the reach I was having, and people saying to me, "You mean I can do that?" Well, yeah. I mean, not everybody's going to let you in their door to play for tips, but there's
Right.
going to be somebody
Hmm.
somewhere.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that second book because it just sounds exciting to me. Um,
Yeah.
how do you help people find their
Hmm.
purpose?
Yeah. Well, I love the story that you just shared because some of it is similar to mine, especially with like the music, and the music kind of went away. And I thought that was my purpose. I was like, this is my dream. And I like to say I followed my dream and found my purpose. And I think for you, you are in a position with the school and you love what you did. You thought you found it, but it didn't go how you wanted it to go or how you thought you would arrive, but you hadn't. But the tools and everything that you learned about yourself for that role really was the layup drill before the game began. It's like you did all that to be ready for what your next piece was. And even like the things that you talked about is very similar to conversations that I have with people. And it's like if you're in a job that you don't like what are you doing to get out of the job? I mean, or not necessarily get out of the job because you need to survive, you need money. So my advice would never be just quit your job. I know there's a lot of
Right.
people out there, motivational people that like walk in tomorrow and quit your job. But no, I would not recommend that. But what I will recommend is something similar to what you said, like take some inventory on what your talents are, what your passions are. And this is some of the work that I do that my book is connected to. And write out goals, your skills, your talents, and then start trying different things, and maybe it is singing. Maybe you want to be a barista, but baristas don't pay that much money. So maybe you can still be a barista and still be an accountant. You're an accountant by day, barista 2 nights a week at Starbucks or at a local coffee shop. Um, Maybe you have another business idea that's like this big idea, creating an app or another kind of business or a nonprofit or something like that. So now you want to be disciplined with your time. Like start putting time on the calendar to devote to that craft. And that's one of the things that I teach people about. Like my book is called Finding Your Edge, and EDGE is an acronym and it stands for eliminating distractions, discovering yourself, generating goals, and enacting discipline. And this is just like a path that you walk down, and it has to be in this order because, to your point, like when you're in this job, but you feel like there's something more that you have to offer, the first thing you need to do is really just like eliminate the distractions, eliminate the noise. It could be physical distractions like a phone or TV or people in your life, or it could be noise in your head, just silencing the head, and stillness. Um, because you can't really start to develop yourself and start that new plan if you're constantly being pulled or distracted. Like you have to have a sense of focus in order to start that work. And then some of the things we talked about, like the discover yourself is, writing out my talents. It could be going to counseling. It could be doing assessments and batteries to understand yourself a little more, or talking to friends and family that you know and trust and asking them, like, what am I good at? Because a lot of times we don't recognize what our skills are because we just live life and we're doing things that we consider normal. But people around us are like, no, you're really good at this, but you don't recognize it because
Right.
you're in your own skin. So I think these are indicators of something more that I'm not going to say should be, but may want to pay attention to. So once you kind of have that, now let's start to generate some goals. Okay, I've decided that I want to start a nonprofit. I have a heart for this kind of work. I'm passionate about this cause. So let me start to generate goals. By the end of this month, I'm going to register my nonprofit and I'm going to read this book and do X, Y, Z. And then you have to have like that discipline to continue the path forward because you can eliminate your distractions, learn all this stuff about yourself, generate goals. But if you don't do anything about it, then you've done all this work for nothing and you'll be an accountant the rest of your life. Now, if you love accounting, hey, it's all good.
Yep.
be an accountant. But if you're an accountant, and I'm just using that because you brought that
Right,
example to
right.
the table. So because I love accountants, nothing against accountants. Um, but if you are an accountant and you want to do something different, like you have to enact that discipline and continue to put work behind it every day. And maybe it's not, you can take a day off. Every day is a blanket statement. Sometimes you do need to pause, you do need a break, but just being consistent towards accomplishing that next phase of your life.
Well, I know I was told a very long time ago um, that I had too many dreams.
Hmm.
And and this was told to me by a therapist, okay, that
Yeah.
you're you have too many dreams.
Hmm.
You've got to settle in. Um, you're a wife, you're a mother, you're a daughter, you have responsibilities. And I remember the last time I went to see the therapist, I just fell apart crying. How can
Hmm.
you keep telling me that this is all I have? I'm missing something. And I
Hmm.
said, I love my husband dearly. I'm not leaving him, but I'm missing something. I
Hmm.
love my sons dearly, but I can't keep doing everything just for them.
Yeah.
And when my mother calls or my mother-in-law calls, yes, I go running, but sometimes I have to be able to say, I can't do it now. I said, do you
Hmm.
know how many times I've run somewhere to help somebody and I'm so angry that
Hmm.
I'm not doing a good job for them.
Yeah.
And she just looked at me and she said, get over yourself. And I got in my car and I thought, there are good therapists and there are bad therapists. He's
Yeah.
not a good therapist. I'm
Hmm.
not going to see a therapist again
Yeah.
because I knew at that moment I had to make changes.
Hmm.
And if my listeners think I knew what they were, I had absolutely no idea. But I
Hmm.
knew at that point that I had to be able to say to myself, I'm capable.
Hmm.
And so, it took a while. It was probably another year or two before, the college sort of pushed me out of the door. So I sort of knew there was something wrong back then, but
Hmm.
wasn't associating it to what was happening. And
Yeah.
there are still days that, I wake up and it's like, do I want to do another podcast? Do I
Yeah.
want to do another coaching session? And I have to say, I'm going to take a deep breath and figure it out.
Hmm.
And then when I say, yeah, I do,
Hmm.
maybe I'm just overloaded right now.
Hmm.
And so don't give up your dreams or your passions or your
Yeah.
purpose
Hmm.
because you're tired and overwhelmed. That's when
Right.
you need to take a step back.
Hmm.
And that's when you need to read a book like Jeremy
Yeah.
is out there to
Yeah, read my
find
book,
your
please.
purpose.
Yes, yes. Now, there's certainly self-care and prioritizing that because even in your example, when you have people who depend on you, and even when if you don't, like you have to have time to you can't give more of yourself to others and be the best help that you can be to others if you're not complete yourself. And sometimes you do have to say no and put those boundaries in place. And if people around you aren't used to that, then it may not be well received to begin with. But having that dialogue to help them understand, like, listen, I don't have anything else in me right now. Like I need time for me so that I can be better for you and be better to myself because
Absolutely.
I want to live a long life, and I can't if I'm constantly stressed and can't just hit the pause button sometimes and refresh and restore. Like you have to have that. It's unrealistic to live a life where you're always go, go, go. Even if you are tapped into your purpose and you're living that purpose, there are going to be days where you are tired. Finding your purpose doesn't mean that your life is this euphoria. I mean, we're still on Earth, and Earth is it's a beautiful place, but it's an ugly place. This is not heaven. This is not perfection. So you're gonna have those days where you just don't have it in you, and some days you won't feel inspired. But that doesn't mean that that's still not your purpose. It just means that I just need to take some time today, and tomorrow the sun comes up, we rise up out of bed again, and a lot of times you're gonna find that energy and that motivation that you need to keep going.
You are right. So how can my listeners find you and follow you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, jeremyhazelwood.com, and that's people always misspell my name. So it's Hazelwood, Haselwood. Also on Instagram, I think it's jeremy.hazelwood. My book, Finding Your Edge, How to Unlock Your Talent and Purpose, is available on Amazon, also on Kindle and Audible and Apple Books. So if you want the hardcover, the audio, if you like my voice is the person that read the book. If you hate my voice, get the hardcover or the paperback. Either way, I try to cater to however you want to receive the information.
I love it. Well, we'll have all this information in the show notes.
Cool.
Jeremy, thanks for joining me today. And
No,
I hope everybody will go out and really find their purpose because we only have this one life that we know of. So let's make the
yeah,
most.
that's it. Yeah, thank you, Karen, for having me on your show today.
Thank you. Take care now. Bye bye.
All right.